You may have recently seen this video from the plain Bagel calling myself out and many other financial YouTubers for the sketchy or even scammy practice of getting paid to promote stocks to their audiences on YouTube. And here's the truth. He's right. And it's why I completely stopped doing this and all sponsorships on my channel back in 2023. But here's the thing. The reality is actually even worse than what the plain Bagel made it seem like. And so I'm gonna show you some additional dangers you need to watch out for that he didn't point out in his original video. I'll have that link below. Great video, I highly recommend you going and watching that. I'm also going to explain why I ever even did this in the first place and what made me eventually quit. When I first started making videos on YouTube, just like everybody who starts off, I was not monetized. In fact, it took me about 6 months to get to that point where I had 1,000 subscribers and enough watch hours for YouTube to start paying me the split of the ad revenue that played on my videos. Now, even once I started making money from AdSense on YouTube, it was still only a couple of dollars per day in the beginning. But for an entire year after getting monetized, that was pretty much my only source of income. Not enough to pay the bills, but I wasn't doing anything else. I was just focused on growing the YouTube channel. But soon I realized how much money there was in doing sponsored ads on my YouTube videos. I could talk about somebody's product for 1 minute or 2 minutes, and I could make a couple $1,000s for just one video. And it was even better because I was talking about a product that I already used or liked anyway. So to me, it seemed like a win-win, but that was nothing compared to what came next. Because after a while, I was introduced to the idea of doing sponsored stock reviews, where instead of spending a couple of minutes talking about a product and getting paid for it, I spent a couple of minutes in a YouTube video talking about a stock and getting paid for it. Now, in the beginning, I approached it the exact same way I had been approaching product promotions. Get the script from the company, record the video, get paid. Easy peasy. This was also at a time where I was still very bullish on the mining industry overall, and so it was aligned with my market views. But it wasn't long before I realized that something different was going on here. The first sign of trouble that I noticed was that usually at some point soon after I did a review on a stock, the price of that stock would start to drop. Now, the first couple of times this happened just seemed like a fluke. Stocks will go up, stocks will go down. But it started happening very consistently. So I had to start doing some digging. And I realized something that the plain Bagel points out in his video, that many times when companies were paying for promotion like this, it was because they were in the middle of fundraising by issuing shares. Now, this is different than insider trading or pump and dump scheme, but it is still a shady practice where a company is paying to promote their stock while at the same time issuing new shares in order to take advantage of that trading activity so that they can raise funds for the company. Now, optimistically, what the company would say is, hey, we've got to raise funds so that we can launch on our next phase of the business, so that we can reinvest in doing this, so that we can get these results, so we can do this mining, so we can eventually become a very profitable company and all the investors make a ton of money. But as you can see from this spreadsheet I'm about to show you, that rarely pans out that way. This spreadsheet was put together by the plain Bagel with every single YouTube video he could find where there was a paid stock review. And on his right-hand column, he shows the performance from the time of the promotion until today. And you can see most of them are down, and most of them are down a lot. Now, there are a couple other things that I need to point out about the information that is on this spreadsheet. Right now, I have his spreadsheet sorted by the channel name. So you can see my channel is listed right here 13 times. And if you scroll through, you can see that is by far the most anybody appears on this spreadsheet. There's a very good reason for that. It's because literally every time I ever did a stock review, I told you I was doing it. So that's why my name appears on this list more than anybody else's. Not because I did it more than anybody else. In fact, I was so blatant and straightforward about doing a stock review in a YouTube video that actually hurt my ability to get more of these sponsors for my channel, because they didn't want you to be as straightforward about it as I was. Every single name on here, I know for certain did many more stock reviews than shows up on this spreadsheet. They just didn't disclose it, so there's no way to filter for it and find it. Furthermore, you can see the amounts that everybody was paid. My payments ranged between $10,000 and $20,000 per stock review. You can also see on here, there are some that are much more than that, and I know, again, without a shadow of a doubt, many people on this list got paid a lot more than what was disclosed. Now, I wanted to point this out because the only reason that this this video from the Plain Bagel and this spreadsheet was even able to be made in the first place was because of the disclosure that was happening, the disclaimer, the person saying, hey, I am doing this, which means there's a ton out there where somebody's talking about a stock and just didn't disclose it, and there's no way for anybody to tell. But let's take a look at a couple other issues that the Plain Bagel raises here, because I want to show some more info behind the scenes on what is actually going on here.
What's also pretty sketchy here is the seeming coordination across different channels for the sponsorships. Well, it's not uncommon for companies to carry out these kind of marketing campaigns in these types of bursts. For any given stock, we do often see YouTubers posting their sponsored videos all around the same date or two. Almost as if those paying for these videos are trying to have the biggest impact on the stock's price by kind of concentrating the buzz around it.
No, this is not almost as if the company was trying to concentrate the buzz around it. That was the express goal. That is the reason why it happened that way. A company would be raising money, they'd be issuing shares. They wanted to make sure they didn't have too much of a negative impact on the share price. And so they would launch a big marketing campaign so that other people would hopefully invest in the company, buy those shares the company was issuing, so that they would take the hit on it, or they would raise the money that way. That was the entire purpose of these marketing campaigns. Wasn't coincidental at all. Next.
Instead, they're usually hiring a third-party investor relations or marketing company who themselves are going out and paying these creators. So it is unclear how involved the companies themselves are with these marketing decisions, but regardless, they're the ones who are ultimately behind the payments.
Okay, this is true. So most mining companies, especially the tiny ones that engage in most of these marketing practices, they're not out there. They don't know the contacts. They don't have the ability to contact people or even have the time to do it. So they rely on a third party, a marketing agency, to be the go-between. So they'll purchase a large package from one of these marketing companies. Maybe it's a couple $100,000. And then that marketing company has the contact info of the people who have newsletters or the YouTubers like myself, and they will make the entire marketing campaign. And there will be some coordination on dates, but there will be discretion from the marketing agency on when it happens, who does it, how it happens, and how much each person gets paid based on the size of their audience. Next.
Now, given that Canada is a big resource play, maybe that makes a bit of sense, but it is weird, right? Most of these YouTubers are American, so it's strange that they're promoting stocks for their northern neighbor.
Okay, there's a couple of reasons why most of these companies were Canadian based. The biggest one is because most mining companies that are inside the North American region are going to be in Canada. It's one of the things that Canada does best. The other thing is that there is somewhat of an easy access between the capital markets between Canada and the United States, and US investors typically have access to Canadian markets, and there's a lot more money in American markets. And so it makes sense that Canadian companies would be trying to access American markets. Next.
What sort of financial growth opportunities can we have by investing in them? Well, I can't really say. Not because I didn't look into these firms and try to figure out what their finances looked like, but just because there's not much to look at. Not only do all but 4 companies have negative earnings, not only do all but 3 not even have positive operating cash flow, but most of these companies don't have sales.
If you know anything about the mining industry at all, that should come as no surprise to you, because most mining companies are not engaging in any sales whatsoever. They buy a piece of property, they do some drilling, they look at the samples, they try and figure out how much of a particular resource is in that land, they try and see how much of it is easily accessible, and that's most of the lifespan of these smaller companies. In fact, most of them ever plan on getting to the point where they're actually gonna pull that metal out of the ground. They're just planning on getting to the point where they're like, hey, there's enough of it and it's easy enough to access that we're gonna sell the company to a mining company that's actually going to take it out of the ground. So a lot of these smaller companies are never even planning on getting to the stage where they have sales at all. These are all exploration stage companies, which also means most of them will never, ever, ever make a single penny. The only way they survive is with new investors, kind of like a lottery ticket, hoping that they strike a rich resource that they didn't know was there and are able to sell the company for a lot more to a company that's actually going to take it out of the ground. Next.
The company paid the equivalent of 3.5 million Canadian dollars for stock promotion, which is more than it spent that year on exploration and evaluation. And while this is just one example, for many companies, investor relations and marketing were pretty consistently one of the largest expense items on their income statements.
This is also 100% true. Most of these mining companies, the vast majority of their money that they are spending is in an effort to get more investors to invest in their company just so that they can continue to survive. This is kind of like the nonprofit charity 501c3 model, where you can take a look at their disclosures and see most of the money that they raise from donations, they're not using that for the good that they're saying. It's not going to hungry people, going to housing, going to water or food or anything like that. A lot of times it's used on hosting more, larger, better fundraising events to raise even more money. So they're in this cycle of raising money, getting new investors in order to keep the company going. And in order to continue to keep the company going, they have to raise more money and spend more money on that. But this is not all going to people who are, financial publications or newsletters or YouTubers. A lot of this money is spent on the CEOs, the directors, the people running the company themselves, going to events, going to conferences. So a lot of it is flights, a lot of it is at hotels, a lot of it is food, a lot of it is all these expenses to fly these people all around the country to conferences and things like VRIC so that they can go and hopefully raise money there themselves. Next.
Another group we've only briefly touched on that throws another conflict into the mix: the third-party marketing agencies themselves. As mentioned, the majority of these campaigns are carried out by just a handful of marketing companies. For example, Gold Standard Media and its list of affiliates. That itself, not surprising. Most YouTube sponsorships are actually negotiated through these sort of middlemen. But what is notable is that in some cases, these agencies have actually themselves participated in share issuances for these companies, or have otherwise been paid in restricted stock units or stock options for the businesses they're carrying out these campaigns for. And because these agencies aren't typically classified as insiders, we don't get to see their trading activity from the outside, or whether they've taken advantage of their own campaigns to sell their shares. But guess what? We don't have to be all that imaginative about their strategy, because look at this disclosure from Gold Standard Media about what they do with the shares they're paid. Quote, "We routinely sell the securities before, during, and after the dissemination of the publication." What?
Now, this is also absolutely true. The way that these marketing companies work is they will get a package payment from the mining company of shares and cash, and then the marketing agency can decide, hey, we're going to use this to pay out. We're going to use the cash to pay out the influencers, and we're going to keep the shares ourselves so that we can make our money that way. Now, that disclosure there, it is a little bit standard, and you'd expect that because these marketing campaigns can last 6 months, a year, 2 years, something like that. There's a lot of discretion from the marketing agency on how long they last. And the lockup periods for selling the shares are usually a lot shorter than that. So they have to put this disclosure in there because for the marketing agencies to usually make any money on these campaigns, they have to sell the shares at some point. And yes, there are the lockup periods. And yes, they're usually having the campaign go during a time where they can sell shares. But at the end of the day, that's how they usually make their money, is by getting the shares and hopefully then later selling them at a higher price. Is it a conflict of interest? Yes. Is it shady? Yes. And that's why I'm sharing all this with you, because once I discovered a lot of this, I stopped doing these stock sponsorships. Now, I do want to be clear about something, because every single time I did a sponsored stock review, I did my best to be as straightforward as possible with you to tell you what was going on. Number one, the only requirement that YouTube specifically has when you are getting paid for something in the video is that you check a box when you're uploading the video that says there's a paid promotion. That way the YouTube video itself will pop up a little card that says this video contains a paid promotion. This is what it looks like when you're actually uploading a video. There's a little checkbox here that says my video contains a paid promotion, like a product placement, sponsorship, or endorsement. That's YouTube's only requirement. I don't have to say anything. I don't have to put in the description. They just require that I check that box. I always check that box, and most people never do. But number one, I always check that box. Number two, I verbally always told you that the stock I was about to talk about was a sponsored stock review. This is the very last one I ever did. You can see it took place on September of 2023. And here's where I begin talking about the stock. That's where today's sponsor comes in, West Red Lake Gold Mines, symbol WRLGF. This is another thing I've seen time and time again from everybody on that spreadsheet. When they do a sponsored stock review, they didn't tell you that they were getting paid to talk about it. Number 3, I always placed it front and center in the description of the video. This portion of the video description is called above the fold. It's the text that shows up without clicking more. You can see I always put today's sponsor and the name of the company. That way you knew for sure. If you saw the thing from YouTube, if you heard me say it and you looked at the description, I had it everywhere that this was a sponsored segment. The last thing is I always told you whether or not I owned the shares. I said, hey, I own some of the shares of this stock. Hey, I don't own any shares of this stock. Hey, I own a very small position in this stock. I always wanted to make it clear to you because I felt like I needed to give you all the information possible so you knew exactly what was going on. And then you could make an educated decision for yourself about it. In fact, if you wanted to, you could even go into the description and click on the link for the full disclaimer. By the way, this is where he got the information about how much people were paid. It's literally in the description of my videos. And you can see the full disclaimer. You go all the way down to the bottom here and you can see it shows exactly what I got paid. Now, I've never deleted a single video I've ever made. You can go back and check. This disclaimer, including how much I got paid, is in every single one of my sponsored videos. And I know many people who have done many reviews that don't say they're paid and never put this disclaimer in there. And so at the time, my thinking was I'm basically operating like a news channel at this point. I'm talking about current events and I'm getting paid to promote a product or a stock. And as long as I'm being honest and clear about what's going on, you can make up your own decision about what to do. However, I didn't like that because at the end of the day, I knew in the back of my mind that you weren't watching my videos so that I could be a mouthpiece for somebody else. You were watching my videos because you had built somewhat of a trust in my opinions and what I was saying. And I didn't want to hurt that any more than I already had. So back in 2023, I completely stopped doing every single sponsorship, including sponsored stock reviews like this. But I told you earlier, it gets worse. Not only is this a small fraction of all of the YouTubers who are promoting stocks and not telling you they're getting paid to promote them, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is not something that is isolated to YouTube. This is not something isolated to financial influencers or on social media. This is actually the way the financial system works. Every single stock mention, every single report on a company on a financial newsletter or a financial website, every CEO being interviewed on CNBC, every company talked about on Yahoo Finance, these are paid promotions. They're not disclosed. Those audiences are being monetized so that the company who's paying for those eyeballs can hopefully get some new investors. This is how the fiat financial system works. Now, it probably sounds like I'm trying to downplay what's happening on YouTube, make it seem like it's not that big of a deal. It's actually the opposite. That is a big deal, and what's happening everywhere else is a really big deal, very dangerous, that most people will never have any idea is going on. Even let's say you go to your financial advisor at Edward Jones, who you trust because you're paying him for his unbiased research and opinions. And let's say he puts you in a Dave Ramsey approved diversified portfolio of stock mutual funds. Guess what? The mutual funds that he picks to put you in, he's getting a check from the mutual fund company. It's called a 12B1 fee, and almost every single mutual fund out there has these, where they pay advisors and brokers to put your money into their funds, because at the end of the day, there's really not that much difference between this mutual fund that invests in 1,000 stocks and this mutual fund that invests in 1,000 stocks. So the way that they get money into their funds so they can make fees on your money inside the fund is by paying a portion of that to your broker to put you in those funds, who, by the way, you're paying him for his advice in the first place. This is how the fiat financial system works, and until you learn how to invest intelligently for yourself, until you have a financial education, you will always be vulnerable to financial predators, which is why I pivoted away from being a media company selling advertising space to eyeballs who I had built trust with. I don't like that model. I haven't done a single sponsored stock or sponsored product review since 2023, and I never plan to go back. The only way I make money now is by teaching you how to invest for yourself, teaching you how to research stocks, teaching you how to trade, teaching you how to allocate your portfolio for yourself. Financial education is the only financial asset that nobody can ever take away from you and can protect you from financial predators. So I make all my money now from my private coaching group where I teach you how to invest for yourself, and I publish my own financial research, nobody else's opinions. I don't make any money whatsoever anymore from any outside company paying me to promote their stuff. I used to do that, and while I don't necessarily blame anybody who wants to create a media business model where the way that they make money is by selling the eyeballs who trust them to somebody else who has a product, I personally don't like it, and I don't think it's the most sustainable. And anybody who is doing it without being honest and straightforward and giving you all of the information is probably a red flag for being able to trust them in other areas. Now, if I missed anything that you want to be addressed, I'd love to see your comments and or your questions in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. As always, I really do appreciate you guys, and I really thank you for watching every single video that you do watch. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without you. So I truly thank you, and I really do hope you have a great day.